What's up, design family, and welcome back to another episode of Fittdesign TV. So glad to have you back on the channel. On today's episode, we'll be looking at the importance of administering good quality control methods for your fashion design production. We'll look at two key types of inspections that you're most likely to conduct when it comes to quality control in a batch production, as well as ways to scale up your quality control efforts depending on the size of your production. We'll also assess two different use case scenarios where you'll need to administer special requirements for your quality control methods, as well as look at the 11 key areas that any quality control procedure should be addressing when it comes to verifying the quality and the consistency of products. The importance of great quality control cannot be understated, and it's a great way to give you the leg up on competition, as well as maintain a quality and a consistency across the brand that's going to inspire confidence from your customers. Hey guys, and welcome to Fittdesign TV. So glad to have you here. On this channel, we discuss all things sports fashion, graphic design, manufacturing, and technology. We'll discuss key topics, answer pressing questions, and provide actionable steps on starting your own product line. If you're interested in any of the above topics, stick around. You're in for a good one. Quality control is an essential part of any batch production segment. Make sure to work with factories that are consistently offering you great quality products that fit your quality control standards. It's extremely important to administer the right type of quality control that is right for your business and the scale of your production. We can look at two key types of quality control methodologies, and the first one involves your online or your inline inspection process. Your online or your inline quality control process is an inspection process that's done during the process of manufacturing. So in the middle of the manufacturing process, not once all of the garments are done and ready to ship. So the benefits of using this type of methodology are, number one, is it reduces the number of defects in the finished products. Number two, it's an easier way to repair defects. If you can call out the defects earlier in the production stage, where less of the components have been assembled, at that point, you're more likely to be able to repair that at a lower cost and time effort. And then lastly, it's a great way to save both time and money. Because you're catching these details earlier on, you're able to address them when there's less overhead and you've already invested less materials and less labor into this production. The second methodology of inspection is called your on-table or your final inspection process. This involves taking the finished garment and inspecting it on table for visual defects or any other defects that may have been missed during the inline process. The benefits of this are, number one, it minimizes the chances of a defective product making it to your shelves or your online store and potentially being delivered to a customer. And then number two, it gives you a second layer of protection to pick up against any defects that might have been missed in the previous inspection process. Now, naturally, given this information, you're probably asking yourself, well, does that mean that I have to check every single piece that comes out of my production process? For smaller brands, that may very well be possible. Most small brands with smaller batch productions will end up checking 100% of the pieces because it is quite feasible at that time. However, as you scale and as your batch production numbers grow, that's no longer going to be feasible or cost effective. So what do you do in that case? Well, larger brands employ what is known as the AQL, or the accepted quality levels. When it comes to AQL, this determines the maximum percentage of defective products within a batch or a sample size that can be accepted before an order is shipped out. When it comes to your AQL table, there are three key fields that you'll need to consider. Number one is your lot or your batch size. That's the overall quantity. And next, we'll need to take a random sample set from that batch size, which would be considered your sample size. So these are the pieces that are actually going to be inspected. Like we mentioned, you can't get to everything, so we'll need to take random sizes or random pieces out of each batch size in order to inspect. And then number three is your acceptable quality level. And there are three key fields or levels to consider. Number one is 2.5, which is considered your toughest. This will have a maximum number of defective products that can be allowed before a batch is failed. Number 2 is your 4.0 or your less tough. This is in the middle, and this will also have its maximum number. And then lastly is your easiest or your 6.5, and this is the least stringent out of the 3 levels. Now that we've established what are the main categories of our AQL table, we'll look at some specific numbers. Let's evaluate this for a batch size of 151 to 250 pieces. In this case, we'd obtain a sample size of around 30 pieces. This is based on a percentage, and obviously this will scale up as your batch size increases. When it comes to the 3 key categories from the toughest to the easiest, for our toughest, you can only fail a maximum of 2 pieces before that entire batch is considered a failed batch. When it comes to our medium tier, you can only fail 3 pieces, and then when it comes to our simplest tier, you can only fail 5 pieces. So depending on the methodology that you're applying or the level of stringency that you're applying, these are the pieces that can be failed. In certain cases, your products or your fabrics may need to undergo a specific type of laboratory testing that standard inspection methods don't test for. I'll give you guys a specific example. If you have a product that touts anti-odor, or let's just say anti-stain properties, and it's rated for 100 washes before the effect wears off, in order to be able to legally advertise that, you may need to get a second-hand laboratory testing that tests that fabric under those conditions 400 washes in order to verify if that claim is true or not. At the same time, if you have a certain quality rating or color fastness from your factories or your mills, by undergoing laboratory testing, you can accurately test those fabrics to ensure the quality that your consumers and your customers ultimately rely on. Now that we've evaluated the importance of good quality control methods, as well as how to scale your quality control efforts depending on the size of your production, we'll look at the key areas or the key characteristics that you should be calling out in any inspection process. We'll start off with your sizing. You need to make sure that your measurements on your finished goods actually match the measurements on your approved sizing chart. Obviously, you need to allow for a certain tolerance, and the bigger your measurements are, the larger your tolerance has to be. For example, something that is considered a small measurement size or span, like your collar half width, you may allow plus minus 0.25 off of what you've allowed for in your measurement chart. But for something like the center back length, where you have a larger span, you may need to allow around plus minus 0.75 off of your main measurement chart. 2, you'll want to evaluate the colors of your garments and your fabrics. You'll want to check for dye spots, so areas where you have excess dye and you can easily see that in the finished garment, as well as evaluate your colors or your fabric's color fastness. Color fastness is the ability of a fabric's color to retain its vibrancy over time and over washing. You can either do this through a wet or what's known as a crocking test. Number 3, you want to test the fabric. When it comes to areas to test in the fabric, we need to look at the thickness. We'll also want to look at the weight. We'll look at the fabric's ability to resist piling, as well as the fabric's ability to resist tears or any other holes or slubs in the fabric. Number 4, you definitely want to look at your seams and your stitching, especially when it comes to how they're applied on the garment. Some things to look at would be the seam strength, the amount of stitches per inch. You'll also want to look at open seams or incorrect thread use or incorrect stitching methods. You'll also want to look at skipped stitches. You'll want to look at loose threads, and you'll want to look at the correct applications of right seam types. Number 5, you'll want to look at the appearance of the finished garment. Look for marks, actual visual marks on the garment, as well as unfinished edges that haven't been hemmed properly. Number 6, you definitely want to be looking at the fitting. If the fitting isn't the same as the approved PP samples within the correct measurements or within the correct tolerances, that's something you'll also want to call out. Number 7, look for smells. Smells is an often overlooked component of inspection, but giving your customer a product with a bad smell can be a huge turn away, and it's something that would not represent your brand the way that you want it to be represented. Number 9, there should be a safety component to every inspection that you conduct. When you have a product on a production line, sometimes you can have needles, staples, or other sharp materials that are offloaded onto the finished garment. Making sure that your finished garment is inspected with a metal detector to take away any of these sharp objects can be a huge plus and something that can save you from a lot of trouble down the line. Number 10, look for the packaging. You need to make sure that all of the care labels the prints, and any other packaging elements are applied onto the right garments in the right combinations. The last thing you want to do is to have a size small garment and to have a size large care label applied to it. At the same time, if you have specific types of hang tags for certain products and those are being mixed between styles, that can be an easy way to create a production that is a nightmare when it comes to receiving the finished products and having to repack and to rearrange all products after the fact. And last but not least, if you have a printed pattern or a visual pattern on your finished garment, you want to make sure that the pattern is applied correctly, at the correct scale, with the correct colors, and that when it comes to your sewing lines, that your pattern edges meet up correctly. Any compromise in any of these areas will completely ruin the finished product and ultimately give your customers a bad look and a bad opinion of the finished goods that they're receiving from you. That's a wrap, guys. Hopefully you have a clear idea of the importance of good quality control methods and the benefits that it can bring your brand. Yes, it's a little bit time consuming and you need to set up the infrastructures in place, but your suppliers will take you more seriously and your customers will ultimately receive a better end result. So it is a win-win if you do look at it. It's a way to give you and your customers and the suppliers you work with peace of mind that everything is being done according to plan. If you guys enjoyed this more business and technical oriented video, please let us know in the comments below. Let us know what other videos you want to see in the future. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Fittdesign TV. Until next time, stay awesome.